for this evening's conversation. So just by way of introduction, just tell us your name, your position, your title, and your role in disaster management in Dominica. Ladies
Okay,
first.
all ladies first.
Sorry, Cecil.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, great. Well, my name is Liz Fabian, and I'm the Executive Director of Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce. I'm really pleased to be here tonight to share with you some of the experiences I've had, lessons I've learned, and how DIC is contributing to disaster management in Dominica. Just also want to share that as DIC is involved in this, we're also part of ARISE, the Private Sector Alliance for Disaster Resilient Societies, and CARICHA, which we'll speak more about later on.
Yes, so I can tell you will have quite a bit of information to share with us. So now let's go over to Cecil Shillingford as he introduces himself.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Cecil Shillingford. I'm a disaster risk management specialist, and I also served previously as the National Disaster Coordinator for Dominica.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for being here. And Brenton?
Hi, good evening, everyone. And I am Brenton Hillier, Agency Manager of Sagicor Life. I am also the Vice President of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce. So Lisa and I am connected. And I'm also connected to Cecil. Actually, all three of us are Rotarians on this call, so it's quite interesting.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to have a very open discussion where we're not going to have any particular questions pointed to anyone. So we'll just throw the questions out, and if you feel inspired to, you will answer the question. So the first thing we want to note is that the hurricane season began on June 1st. So we are about a week into the hurricane season. And as I mentioned before, it is predicted to be a very active season. So let's just talk about being prepared. So being prepared on the personal level, being prepared on the business level, and preparing your property. So if anyone wants to jump in, feel free to do so.
Okay, well, I'll
you.
jump in. It's that time of year, you know, when we put a lot of the measures that we have been assisting the various individuals and communities around the island, put it into practice. We know the situation with Dominica, how prone it is to natural hazards, and hurricanes are nothing new to us, coming out of two recent very devastating experiences, Tropical Storm Erika in 2015 and Hurricane Maria in 2017. So I know everybody is doing everything that is necessary at this time. Lizra mentioned earlier on in our informal discussion that she was involved in a training today. I myself was also involved with a training today with the local government department of the government, where we were in the community of Loubier, and of course some other southern communities were part of the training. And we were looking at vulnerabilities, and we know that this country is very vulnerable to hurricanes and all its secondary effects.
Yes, anyone else wants to chime in?
I'll let Lisa go.
Okay, sure. Well, right now it's an important time for all our businesses and every individual, because it's on a personal and it's a collective level. I think even through our experience with Hurricane Maria, we realize that what happens to us on a national level is compounded by everything we do on a personal level. So if as individuals, we take precaution, we put plans in place, measures in place on an individual level, that will certainly help our collective preparation in Dominica. The same goes for our businesses, and we see that we can have a better private sector that's more prepared for the hurricane season and other risks that we are faced with if on an individual company level we put plans in place. So with the Chamber right now, we are continuing to support and advocate to our businesses to have business continuity plans. And that sounds, I hope it doesn't sound too big, but in breaking it down through our discussion tonight, maybe we can spend some more time looking at what a BCP may entail and how individuals and businesses can adopt some of the best practices of this to make our businesses more resilient.
Yes, thank you so much. And Brenton?
I guess I will be the one putting the plug between the two, being that I come from the insurance sector, and it's really our objective to get both sides of the population prepared, in a sense that insurance is not just for the business sector, and at the same time, it's not just for the private sector, the individuals. So I believe everyone, whether they're operating from the capacity of looking after their family or their own property on their own, or running a business, has to assess the risk that the business faces and ensure that they look at the tools available to mitigate those risks. And that's where we come in as an insurance company to help businesses transfer or help people transfer the risk from their own pockets to us.
Yeah, so let's get into the actual details of being prepared. So on an individual level, your household, your family, what are some recommendations for being prepared for the hurricane season?
Well, first and foremost, every individual and every family unit have to prepare themselves adequately, ensure that there's a business plan. And sometimes when we talk about a family having a business plan, everybody thinks is you writing up this big book about what you do, what you don't do.
Right.
But it doesn't really have to even be written or printed. It can just be an understanding among family members as to what each member of the family does in the event that there is a call that a tropical storm or hurricane is approaching. So one of the examples I always use is that if it happens to be a school day, instead of both parents rushing to the school to pick up the kids, one parent knows that I am supposed to go pick up the kids, and the other one will go and secure the last minute items that they require to go through a hurricane situation. Of course, we expect people to have these things already well in advance, because once we talk about the hurricane season started, and of course, you know, we have seen storm events even before the actual start of the hurricane season. As you're aware, Tropical Storm Anna has already gone through. It was not in our region, but it was a subtropical up close to Bermuda. So again, when you see these occurrences, it really just tells you that you have to always be prepared, because nothing prevents us from hearing in a couple of days' time there is a storm approaching us. And we really do not like people to be doing this last minute thing, rushing to the stores and so on. You know that every year from June 1, there's the hurricane season, at least a couple of weeks before, or the month end, you start preparing yourselves.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I especially like that you talked about delegating responsibilities, because I think those are conversations that sometimes it's difficult to have, but it's necessary. So I absolutely like the idea of one parent picking up the children and another parent attending to the home, because sometimes those are things that we don't even think about.
Yeah, and I mean, even the children, they're supposed to know what they should do.
Yes.
I mean, we are in a small country. We have situations where both parents work,
Yeah.
and they may be working in town, and the children might be in school in the country area, and they get caught off from each other. The children must know what they're supposed to be doing, and everybody's supposed to be exchanging telephone numbers, so you know exactly how to contact members of the family in the event there is a separation. We're in a situation where, or in a country where we have microclimates. Nothing can be happening in town. And in another part of the country, it's raining cats and dogs. You have a landslide, you get caught off. The children need to know exactly what do they do. Do they go to the grandparent? Do they go to the neighbor, etc., etc.? So all these things have to be put in place by way of a plan. And as I said, not necessarily a written plan, but something that the whole family understands. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the idea of getting your shopping done early, because we know hurricane seasons come every June 1st.
Yeah, well,
So
you know, I
rather
can.
than wait until a hurricane is announced to rush to the store, have your supplies.
Yeah, but I can tell you a lot about that. I can tell you a
Mhm.
lot about that. I think our people are so laid back and they are last minute crowd that
Mhm.
anytime you announce a storm is going to be heading our way, the last minute everybody runs to the supermarket and you
Mhm.
have the supermarkets jammed. And at that time, people may not even have their shopping list, so they buy all unnecessary things, and you find people buying overbuying. And then sometimes if the storm doesn't come our way, then they blame everybody but themselves.
Wow. Anything you guys want to contribute?
Yes, even in terms of what Cecil mentioned, having that list and having that stock of items in time before anything happens is really important. Sometimes when nothing happens, families eat what they have, and then when a new event comes up, then we go back and shop again. But it's important to keep these items for a period of time. I see smiles, so that means
Mhm.
we're not quite far off with that.
Right.
But
Or even having the list of supplies. So maybe you
exactly,
don't have the money right now to go out and buy, you know,
Hmm.
exactly.
5 gallons of water. But again, hurricane season comes around every year. So why not keep a list of supplies in your cell phone so you
Yeah,
Hmm.
always know where it
every
is,
time you know what
so
to do.
that if something is announced, you know exactly what you're going for. So
Exactly.
you're not wasting money on items that are not going to be beneficial to you
Yeah.
during the hurricane.
And two other things with that is collecting water. Sometimes we
Mhm.
wait until we hear something or after the water is gone to remember that, hey, I have to refill my containers. So that's really important. And also having a bag that includes everything that's important. I think after Hurricane Maria, I practiced that. I put it in place, and I actually have a little bag called I think evacuation bag. It includes
Mhm.
my policies, Brenton, my
Yes.
policies there in that, because I was told that if you lose these policies, you have to go through a long process of getting them back. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
recently, I reminded my mom to let her know, if anything happens to me, this bag is important with my policies, to where to get them, what to do. And that sort of communication is really important among family members. If we have
Mhm.
important documents, put all these documents in one place that's easily accessible, and not thinking of where's my passport? Where's my birth certificate? Where are these items? We need to be able to have them to go as soon as we think of them.
Absolutely. Brenton, you have anything you want to add?
Yes, I actually enjoyed that little piece Lisa mentioned about her evacuation bag.
Yes,
Well, I
it's
remember
important.
from Hurricane Maria, one of my colleagues actually told me that she has a pick up and go bag. So if she has
Go
Mhm.
to
bag,
run
yeah,
away,
yeah. We call it a
you
go
just
bag.
take that bag and dash out of the place. So
Mhm.
that's important. And it goes back to what Cecil said earlier. These are not things that we should be thinking about on the spot. These are things that you are supposed to actually talk about maybe a year in advance and have that concrete document written down or concrete plan in your phone somewhere so that by the time it's approaching, it's a matter of just refreshing your mind. But I think what maybe happens is human nature, the hurricane season is maybe once a year, so we feel that we can forget about it for 9 months in a year, and then as it's approaching again, we go back into it. And I
Mhm.
guess we have to start talking about it more often. Maybe every month there should be some sort of hurricane program to keep people in the mindset of always being prepared. As it pertains to insurance, the key thing before the season comes is that you have to understand what you are covered for. And that's both on the personal level and the business level in terms of being prepared. Because yes, you can have a document from your insurance provider saying that you are covered, and then you assume that you're fully covered. The event occurs, and then when you go back to review it, you realize that there were some deficiencies or some gaps in that coverage of yours. Just as Cecil said, having your list of things that you should have in place before the storm, similar process for your insurance. Go through your policy. Your policy is your list of what you are covered for, and especially for businesses that are heavy capitalized in equipment. All your machineries, furniture, pieces of equipment covered at present. It could be so, it could be a situation where during the course of the year, after initially doing the plan, for your equipment, you bought something new and you forgot to add it on, you should not be discovering that after the fact. So it has to be a continuous process of reviewing your policy, making sure you understand your policy to ensure that any gaps that exist that you are able to take care of, you do so before the event occurs, rather than finding out when it's too late.
Yeah, and I'm happy you brought that up, Brenton, because I think that was one of the major areas of concern for a lot of people after Hurricane Maria. So I want you to talk us through that in terms of they thought they were covered and they were not covered. So what exactly should we be looking for in our insurance company, in our insurance policies? And also a lot of people were underinsured.
Underinsured, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so let's talk about that.
I mean, the simple solution to that is reading your documents. If we all put the energy into going through that physical contract we received from the insurance company, we would see clearly what is covered, what is not covered. And every company has a different, I would say, matrix as to what they offer to their clients. It is our responsibility to make sure that that is explained to us clearly up front before we go into that contractual arrangement with the insurance company. I believe the law speaks to that, where legally speaking, you have about 30 days to go through your contract and make mention of any material disagreements that you have with what's provided in a contract. So before you go home, you should ask your insurance provider simple questions. Can you tell me what exactly I'm covered for? Can you tell me what I'm not covered for? Can you tell me what add-ons you have on the policy that maybe I was not told about? Because, for example, you could have some insurance companies who offer comprehensive coverage, but then comprehensive may not necessarily include acts of God. And that's where you would have to pay extra for acts of God. So you should never assume as it pertains to your contract and what you are provided for. I say we because I am a client as well as being in the business myself. We have a right to ask every question about our coverage to make sure that we are actually covered for what they say that we're covered for. And it's all in your contract. But I don't believe that many of us take the time to comb through the document when we receive it. Most of us take it, we put it on the side, and then when
and I also think most of us are thinking about the price. How much we're going to pay monthly.
Yes, that's a factor too. And I think that also contributed to the underinsurance challenge that we had. I mean, I wouldn't say it was the entire reason, but the misconception is if you insure your property for less than it is worth in terms of the replacement cost, people think that you're actually able to claim up to that percentage of what you are insured for. The insurance law says no. By underinsuring your property, you are sharing the risk with the insurance company. So whatever claim arises, you will find the ratio of what you're insured for divided by the replacement cost multiplied by the claim. So it transfers some of that financial burden onto the client. And apparently that was not understood in our market. And I still believe that awareness is still lacking in our market. I mean, LISRA, through the DAIC, recently organized a symposium at Kempinski, I think that was in 2019. And I had the opportunity to speak on the same topic, that is 2 years after Hurricane Maria. And I was shocked when maybe half of the audience still did not understand the concept of underinsurance. So I still think it's an issue that we maybe have to do some more work on to try to make it as simple as possible for the market to understand, because it is a significant issue and it could end up defeating the purpose of why you had the coverage in place in the first time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, I hear that a lot of training is being done with the organizations that you represent. So just kind of tell us what are some of the training programs that you guys are currently participating in and how those programs can benefit the general public. So Cecil, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, around this time of year, as you enter the hurricane season, lots of training is done. I always say shelter management is one of the key things in disaster preparedness. And once we enter the hurricane season, it's important to make sure that all our shelter managers are up to speed on their training. So that is normally done. And then you have training in damage assessment and needs analysis. This week, I was supporting the local government division with some training, and the first thing we did on Tuesday, I was looking at community involvement in disaster management and all the things that the communities should be putting in place, and the community groupings should also be engaged in. And then today, we were looking at vulnerabilities, and after I did a presentation on vulnerability assessments and risk and hazard management, etc. We brought them out to look at some vulnerable areas, the river, which flooded for Maria, the waterfront, that's the seashore, which also damaged several houses along that stretch, and also the hillside that always slides during the hurricane season or whenever we have heavy rains. And after brought them back together to look at some of the remedial things that we would need to do to ensure that we make the areas a little less vulnerable. If you're able to do certain things to the river to ensure it's free throughput, it's free flow, then you might avoid it spilling over the banks and what have you. And also, there's not much you can do with the slopes, except that if the powers that be would want to either slope the slopes or shelve them so that the whole issue of landslides are minimized. And then also even on the roads too, the traffic situation, now that we have a large influx of vehicles on the road. And there are lots of other trainings. Sometimes we have a community groupings we call CERT, Community Emergency Response Teams, that we want to provide them with additional training because they are the community. And if you provide them with all the skills, then they are able to provide the first response in the communities after you have an event. So these are just some of the many subject matters in disaster management that we do ahead of the hurricane season or ahead of the approach of any hurricanes.
Yes, and of course we're looking at the interaction of the audience this evening, and we have Wilhelmine Adrian. She's a public health professional, and she says make sure the health centers are well equipped with emergency supplies. So is that something that we're taking into consideration as well? And are we still taking into consideration that COVID-19 is not completely eradicated at this time?
Yeah, certainly. And even now we have to modify our shelter management training to factor in COVID-19 because it's not the same as before. You may not be able to allow for the 6 feet distancing, but then you still must maintain some distancing and ensure people are wearing their masks and people are sanitizing or washing their hands. So yeah, the public health, well, I mean, the good news is that we have quite a few brand new health facilities in the various districts. And yes, it is important because sometimes we have big edifices and then they're empty. So it's very important at this time to ensure that the equipment that's necessary, the medication that's necessary, are in those health facilities so that in the event people have to make use of them, that they are well equipped.
Yeah, and while we're talking on this topic as well, is there a resource we can access, for example, to know where the shelters, the hurricane shelters are in our particular community?
Yeah, certainly. There is an app that was done a little while back. I was at the National Disaster Office at the time it was done. And if you go to that app and you click on shelters, then you will find the shelters in your area. But you know, Dominica is a small place. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows all what that's happening around. So if you're in a community, and most communities would only have one shelter. So if you're in a community, you know exactly where the shelter is.
Oh, absolutely. That's good to know. But you don't remember the name of the app, right?
If you look at the Office of Disaster Management app, I think that's where it falls. I have it on my phone, so I can just, while we chat, I can look and tell you in a while. Yeah,
that would be helpful. Now, Lizra, you also talk about training as well. So tell us about the training that you're experiencing now and how it will benefit the general public, businesses in general.
Okay, great. Well, I'll just start with the training that I just came from a few minutes before this session. The Dominican Business Trust is hosting the SBF, like a training for young entrepreneurs, and we just spoke about business continuity and risk management. That's one of the content areas that the Chamber shares information on. And at this training, there were over 20 businesses, and I shared with them the importance of business continuity planning. Several of them were not aware of it before, but helping to the entrepreneurs to look intentionally at how we consider what our risks are and how we take specific action to mitigate this risk. We looked at what risk can we adopt, what risk can we say, I really cannot deal with this risk, so I'm going to transfer it to someone else. So we look at people like Brenton that we say, you know what, I cannot take the risk of if my business vehicle gets into an accident to pay everything from the pocket of the business, then we can't do that. So we're transferring it to businesses like Brenton's business. So that was one of the areas that we looked at. For the Chamber, we started a business continuity and resilience series. The first session took place this week, Tuesday, and there are three episodes as part of this series. The first one looked at insurance for business resilience, and Brenton was one of the presenters there. And the second one looks at security. Oftentimes we think, okay, maybe just physical security, but we are looking at both physical and digital security for our private sector resilience. We're bringing in some security companies, Craig Nesty from NTRC and also the Dominica Police Force to speak on the importance and some of the best practices for physical and digital security for businesses. And the final session that we are looking at on the 30th of June looks at partnerships for enhancing our disaster risk management as Dominica. We have one of our directors, Nikki Maroy Baptist, who is also the CEO of Digital Dominica. Creed is coming on board with this and the Office of Disaster Management. And we are going to look at what are some of the key partnerships that our businesses need and how can we leverage these partnerships to enhance our disaster risk management, not only as a private sector, but as Dominica, the entire Dominican community at large. I must also mention that DIC is part of CARICHAM, which is called the Network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce. And this network comprises of 21 national chambers. We have another joining, Montserrat joining soon, so that takes us to 22. But one of our key pillars focuses on disaster risk reduction. And I'm the focal point for this for our network of chambers. And this month, we're launching our business continuity planning template and guide, which is supported by the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction. What we've seen that, yes, we can tell a business, you need to prepare, you need to put your plan in place, but some businesses actually need the hand-holding and a template and guide to actually get them through to complete this plan, because some persons really do not know how to complete it. So we've gotten some resources from UNDRR. We are partnering with one of our fellow chambers in Arise, which I mentioned briefly before. And we introduced this tool a few weeks ago, but this month we'll be finalizing and launching the tool so that every business who really wants to plan, to be intentional about how they mitigate their disaster risk, can use this tool from our chambers, from our network of Caribbean chambers, to really ensure that we can reduce our risk. So these are just some of the ways that we are collaborating, some of the things we are putting in place to be more intentional about how we mitigate our risk as a private sector.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent tool to have. Will it be readily available to the public? How would businesses be able to access it? Is there a price, a fee for it?
So one of the things we discussed is, do we just make it available to chamber members? Yes, I would really want to say that, but one of the things that we are considering is that, do we limit it to a few and have to repeat a lot of things every year, and some businesses they just keep on being affected, or do we make it open source and we encourage as many businesses to use this? And I mean, it will show the value that the chamber is bringing to the community. So we really don't want to put a price on everything, because we're getting support for this, but we really want all businesses who want it, reach out to us at DAIC, and we'll be able to ensure that you get to use this tool to improve your business management, business continuity planning.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of brings to mind, Cecil, are there any public sessions, any public meetings, any public forums about disaster management, being prepared for the hurricane? Do we have any public forums that people can attend for more information on being prepared? You're muted.
In the various communities, yes, there are different groupings that put together sessions so that the people can come together and discuss the whole issues of their communities and what needs to be done for an approaching storm, or what they need to do before, during, and after a hurricane situation. Some of that is done from the governmental standpoint. Others are done from what we call in Dominica the village councils, because we have these groupings in every community that is sort of the government of the community, and every one of them would also, and that's one thing that I promoted highly when I was the National Disaster Coordinator, is that every council should have a disaster preparedness committee. And these committees, they also organize these sessions and bring in the people from knowledgeable people from outside to assist with them. I'm still very much involved in the village council groupings. I am currently on the village council of my village. I'm also a two-term chairman. So I also promoted it highly from my council standpoint. But yes, it's something that's done all the while. And I know the focus. I know the focus is on hurricanes, but we have other things that affect us from time to time. And once these things kick in, we are always quick to go to the communities affected and provide them with the information that is required. Because, you know, a lot of these things, they really frighten a lot of people, especially the elderly folks and all that. And you really need to calm them down and allay their fears, you know, especially when we talk about volcanic activities and earthquakes and things of that nature. But the focus is on hurricanes. So we'll keep it to hurricanes. And just to mention the app is Weather and Alert app. Weather and Alert app. It provides weather information on a daily basis, and then there are other aspects to the app where you click on certain things and you get certain information.
Yeah, so in case you're just joining us, of course, we're talking hurricane preparedness with Cecil Shillingford, Brenton Hilaire, and Lizra Fabian. And the app that Cecil just mentioned is the app that's available in Dominica in terms of being prepared for a hurricane. So I think that is a fantastic idea. Now, I want us to have a discussion about Hurricane Maria, because as you would have known, Hurricane Maria devastated Dominica back in 2017. So let us talk about lessons we learned from Hurricane Maria and lessons we unfortunately did not learn. So we still have not grasped those lessons from Hurricane Maria, and anyone can feel free to jump in.
Well, in terms of the lessons learned issue, I think we forget quickly. So maybe I should even talk about lessons not learned, because you still see people going about their merry way without a care, you know, in this world. But yeah, well, Hurricane Maria was a special hurricane, and I think that's the strongest hurricane that ever, not I think, I know that's the strongest hurricane that ever hit Dominica. Our point of reference before was 1979 Hurricane David, and now we have this new point of reference. I myself, you know, I'm supposed to be a brave soldier, but I wasn't afraid or coward, but it was a situation where I had never spent a hurricane for the past 25 years at my house. So it was a new experience for me. I've always been in a secured government building in the Emergency Operations Center and areas like that. And it was the first time I was spending it at home. I have a real, if I may say so myself, well-constructed facility. So I was never worried about the facility. But I will be very honest with you that I've never heard these noises in my life before, what I was hearing on the outside. The shaking of the building, I'd never felt my building unless we were having an earthquake, never felt the shaking of the building and what have you. But because Hurricane Maria was just a powerful hurricane, and I could hardly wait for daybreak for me to get outside to see what had happened. As a matter of fact, I thought I was in the basement of the downstairs level of my house, and I thought my upper level had collapsed because of all the noises I was hearing. So as soon as daybreak, I did a quick inspection, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that hardly anything happened to my structure. The noises I was hearing was flying debris from the neighborhood and hitting against my house. So I lost some windows and dented, galvanized, and what have you, because my neighbor's roof fell on top of my roof and things of that nature. But then when I went out to the wider community, I mean, I was just flabbergasted, you know, when I saw what had happened. Almost every house in my neighborhood had lost its roof, you know. And knowing the path that the hurricane trekked through, and just thinking about the other communities that may have been more vulnerable than my community, I just figured that was the end of Dominica. I really thought that was the end of Dominica. And the following day, the day after, because the day after Maria was a very rainy day, so not much could have been done. But the day after, I walked from my community to town to join with the rest of my team so that we could really start putting the pieces together. And the walk that would normally take me 1 hour took me 3.5 hours.
Wow.
And you know, there was no road. You had to go down in the ravine and come back up, go over landslides, go under trees, over trees, telephone poles, light poles, and what have you. Bridges had gone, so you had to go through the river and get out, you know. And it was just, I mean, it was just a mess. I mean, by the time I got to town, I said, I don't think we will see anything in under 25 years. I said it would be 25 years before we could recover. But surprisingly, we did much better than that. And by Christmas, we were already seeing the light of day. But I mean, it was a frightening experience. It's an experience I think anybody who went through would never forget. And I think, again, I will say that we did very well in the recovery. And within 6 months, I was able to drive up to my home. So I didn't have to be walking up and down like I did for 6 months. And in a year's time, you could practically access every community in Dominica. The whole issue of the housing situation and so on, that took quite a while, because up to today, you go around and you still find the tarpaulins on houses.
Yeah,
Even in my presentation to the group today, I was saying, you know, I couldn't believe that just looking out of the building we were using, that there were several buildings without roofs. So everywhere you drive around, and it's not only the poorer areas, the remote countryside areas and so on. You drive through Goodwill, you drive through Santa Roma, you drive through very Kinfield, very affluent areas, and you still see the fury, the force, and what have you of Hurricane Maria.